In the previous part of our Wu campaign, we boomed up, getting rich and powerful, and using those riches to buy several territories off the Shang and the Mingyue. We vassalized the Han and the Shang using our money as well, and made the Mingyue recognize us as the emperor. But while we were doing this, the Chu, our rival to the west, took notice and armed themselves up for war, as did we. Our men are already on their border, and the enemy have declared war, so we just need to make our final preparations. Going to be giving orders to all the troops in my various armies. I won't really go into this in detail, but broadly speaking, I ask all the archers to harass, the cav to usually outflank, and everyone else to just fight. That will be our setup, and we'll see what happens. Pretty much the same deal for all of the armies. Most of the armies actually aren't at the front line right now, they're on the way. But eventually we'll be having 3 or 4 different sectors to this war that we need to cover. For now though, it's just the lower sector, the route towards Ruo, that will be contested. Here we go then, let's give the orders, step over the line and officially violate the enemy's territory. We want the war to take place in the enemy's territory of course, to protect our farms, and it does appear we're going to get that privilege. Our men are just moving up on the other front, so nothing to report there, and the enemy are doing absolutely nothing, so no battles in this first turn. We move into their territory uncontested and start burning the odd farm, so the first blood goes to us. Now then, in the next turn, we just keep advancing and the fighting begins. Still struggling to keep control of the camera, I'll talk more about that in a sec. Let's look at the fighting. Here we've got about 2 stacks worth of troops, maybe a bit more from the enemy, fighting our 2-ish stacks. One of the enemy armies is inside the settlement, meaning it won't really take part in the fight. I think they're supposed to come out and participate in battles that happen outside, but maybe they've been given orders to not participate in fights or something. So we're really fighting 1 and a bit stacks. Most of the enemy's units are noble cavalry. That was okay with me because most of my units are heavy spears and halberdiers, the counter to noble cav. But in some ways, these 2 units are the counter to each other, because cavalry are just good against everything and spears are good against cavalry. So both sides were killing each other in a general mess. And you can look at the numbers at the top and see we're losing men really fast in those fights, even just against cavalry. They do have some peasant spears in there as well, who probably aren't doing all that much. I think it is the cav taking us out. So while we're doing damage back to them, it is a bit of a slaughter, and our right flank gets annihilated by these cav, just gradually walking their way through our ranks. It's pretty nasty stuff actually, and a while later it looked like we were about to lose the battle, but the time limit ran out and our men all reform. While most of our men were off the battlefield, many of them are still alive, they just routed so we can keep fighting, and indeed, we need to fight right away because a small portion of the enemy force comes right back into the battle. In this case, they're attacking the flank of my army, which means the cavalry who were on surrounding duty are first to be engaged, so now our cav are fighting their spears over there. That's a bit nasty. However, once all of our infantry catch up, we'll have overwhelming numbers locally and can win this little part of the fight. Was looking to see my men take down these chariots, but really struggling with the camera. And I thought I'd mention now the problem with the camera is that when you press the key to move the camera, if a frame is skipped and it doesn't detect you lifting the key back up, it thinks you're still pressing it. Meaning as the game goes on and more of the map is revealed and the lag increases, it becomes harder and harder to control the camera, and you'll see the camera making sudden long movements, and that's just a result of me tapping the key to move it and it not recognizing the up part of the tap where you stop moving it. So that's just an apology in advance really. The camera's going to be all over the place, but I'll be doing my best to control it as the lag grows and grows. These 2 armies are still good to go since, as I said, while we had lots of routes, the units are somewhat intact, so we'll keep pushing on towards Ruo over there. We can also now open up our engagements in the other sectors. This is the middle sector going towards the enemy settlement of Chen, where a huge army of cavalry is sitting on the enemy border. All I need to do then is attack with an army that has a load of spears in it, and hopefully it will be okay. We send an army forwards with another stack coming in as backup to help them out. Up north, this is our upper sector. We're going towards Jing, where we've got loads of armies actually, because Yiyang is a good recruitment place, and we're just going to storm forwards into that nice open unguarded farmland. There are a few units of cav there, but I've got a few units of spears specifically picked out to bring down those cav units, and then we'll be clear to advance until enemy reinforcements show up. Because we're making these attacks all at the same time, we can't really check what's going on since it's simultaneous battles, but let's have a quick review of each fight. Around Ro, we have to fight the survivors from the last battle. That'll take a while to get started though. In the middle sector, near Chen, the enemy cav plough into the front of our army, which was just what we wanted really. The front of our army is mostly spearmen with our cav supporting. Now we just wait for victory, and I think things are going okay. The losses are probably mounting more for the enemy than they are for us. They're also throwing good money after bad by sending in a load more cav and chariots to join the fight, but hopefully our spearmen can resist that as well. Up north, our spears have already made quick work of the few units of cav here, but again they were reinforced by additional cav and chariots that we had to deal with, but that wasn't much of a problem. Then the fighting finally starts down at Ro once both armies have navigated around the settlement to fight, and once again, while the enemy's numbers are very high because there's a full stack in the settlement theoretically taking part in the fight, it isn't taking part actually, so it's not that bad. There's also this mini battle off to the east of the settlement where some of our halberds took down the enemy's spears. I think halberds are the upgrade of spears basically, so that's all fine. We are suffering though from a lack of melee troops now, since they took so many losses in the last fight, now that we're being spammed by peasant spears. We're sort of being overwhelmed. Our cavalry holding the enemy off are doing a decent job, but they are fighting spearmen, so it's not going to be the best thing. We're starting to rely more heavily now on archers, which I'm never quite sure about. You can see they are shooting arrows into the enemy, but it doesn't appear to be having that much effect. I think they very slowly kill enemies, so the longer the fight goes on, the more having archers pays off. That means all we have to do is not lose, and that just works okay. The enemy's peasant spears are easier to rout than our professional halberdiers and spearmen, so even though we have numerical disadvantage, we can just sit here, losing the odd guy and grinding the enemy down with our archers, until after a long time the fight is cooled off because neither side won, but the enemy were getting the worst of it, I think. Now then, their army outside the settlement is mostly defeated. We're ready to actually attack the settlement, but you can also see we've lost more than half of our attacking force just to get up to the enemy's walls, so that is a bit of a bad sign. We're pretty rich of course, so we can potentially resolve that by spamming even more troops into the war. Because the war happened before my frontline bases were quite ready however, the nearest locations can only spam inferior armies. We're still going to do that though, because just getting some bodies on the field should help out. We'll throw in the peasants to this mess. The siege of Ro begins then. We've got this trebuchet thing, but when it fired it didn't look like it actually fired anything. They do shoot things sometimes and can break open the walls, and their archers will be doing the same thing. Luckily it's just wooden walls here, so nothing too much to worry about. To the north, there's another battle going on near the city of Jing, where a load of enemy archers came around the south side of the city, and I sent a small group to go and attack them. The group had chariots in it, probably the only army we have that actually uses chariots. I thought maybe we'd be able to catch the enemy in melee, but they were pretty good about running away and not being engaged. There was also a small fight in the central sector, really just clearing up some scraps left over from the previous battle there. Then a fourth sector emerged to the far south, on the other side of the river and mountains from Ro. We've got the territory that used to belong to the Minua that we bought off them, and I've got a stack that's not especially good sitting in the valley between this territory and the nearby Chu territory, and we were actually attacked here by a pretty substantial Chu army. Our force was pretty good. It had loads of army halberdiers, which are the upgraded version of peasant spearmen, basically, not as good as trained spearmen. But the enemy had loads of noble cav. It was pretty much only noble cav again, and that was enough to break through the halberdiers, unfortunately, and we were pretty much annihilated in that battle. Over at the central sector, I have the opportunity to attack Chen, that massive city, but I'm feeling a little bit cautious now. I'm not going to advance so hastily. I want my main line to be anchored around Ruo on the left end, so I'm not going to advance much further than I have already in the open plains just to the north, so we can support the whole Ruo situation as and when needed. In the northern sector, we're going to have a couple of armies circle around to the south of the city to completely cut it off, while other armies start making the long attack on that fortified position. So here we can see that army that destroyed us down to the far south, just loads of cav. They've also got their faction leader here who's really high ranked, so that might explain the enemy's power. They're being mega buffed by this guy being in the battle. So the survivors from my force are going to try and get back into our territory. I do have another army that can move out to support their withdrawal. I wanted to recruit more troops, but there's an issue in the game where you can't recruit men if there are already men in a city, even if they have orders to leave. So there's just a lack of physical space, I guess. We can't get our good troops out, but we can get some inferior troops from the east to start bulking up this sector in case the enemy keep pressing us. Here's some good news. It's time to finally enter the Imperial Age, or the Imperial Era as it's actually called. Our enemies have already done this, I believe, because their peasant spears look different to mine, so now we're in the final age of the game. I only actually did it because I ran out of things to research, so finally we've advanced. Probably could have done it a lot earlier. Don't think it actually gives you any explicit benefits other than unlocking those techs, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Now back to the fighting. At Ro we're starting to hack our way in, and down near Minjong they're coming at us once again. They are going to try and get into our territory, but our new army full of spears is lined up ready to receive all of those cavalrymen. This should be a favourable engagement. It looks, by the way, like we're using loads of peasant spears, but I think these are heavy spears. They just look kind of like the peasant spear unit if you don't have the armourer upgrades, a certain building you can make, which I don't think I have here. The army we're supposed to be screening has successfully fallen back to the town to recuperate, so that worked well. And this noble cav stack does get killed fighting our spearmen. However, the fight isn't over because their faction leader with more cav and some infantry arrived to join the battle, so now there's going to be a second phase. I thought, well, surely we'll easily take these guys down. It's just 2 units of cav and some infantry, so we'll leave them to it. Over at Jing, we've somehow managed to start attacking the city. I didn't actually see how we opened these gates, but someone's managed to get them open, so our men will start hacking their way in. We'll see how I actually did it in a second. And down at Ro, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. We're just gradually hacking through the defenders. We need to kill at least 1 unit so we can open up enough breaches to get the automatic capture. But it's taking a long time because the enemy can't rout, and our men are exhausted. Back down south, I came to look at our definite victory, but things aren't going very well actually. I'm guessing it's just because the enemy faction leader provides such a big buff that his troops are really powerful. He's the max level, I believe, when it comes to the fighting ability. So yes, our men did get routed by the enemy's numerically inferior force. Probably not helping that a lot of our men are going for an outflanking maneuver right now. They do catch those cav who don't seem to be particularly interested. But yes, our centre is gone. It's not a complete disaster or anything. Our surviving units do get some more favourable engagements like that one, fighting the enemy's cav from the front, and we're probably killing a few enemy infantrymen at the same time. There, the slow AI benefiting us there as the enemy very gradually rear attack our men. Down goes the unit of cav right there. It's all looking good. I think we might have lost this battle in the end, but we were saved by the bell once again, so our men fall back. We don't have to give up our position, and now we can reinforce using the army that's in the town to solidify our border defences. Plus the enemy must be running out of troops by this point, so maybe we can avoid being invaded. We'll throw in the survivors from the very first battle. We've got our trash stack moving up as well to bulk out the numbers. The enemy don't appear to have major reinforcement armies on the way, so we're good. I've now built a barracks here at Chaisang so we can get some trained troops to go and support the siege at Ro. Fresh troops are just what we need since everyone is starting to get too tired to really do anything over there. On to the next round of battling then. Here's how things are going so suspiciously well at Jing. We've got loads of these catapult trebuchet things, and they're just annihilating those stone walls. The stone walls are just as easily destroyed as wooden walls when you have trebuchets actually working. And yes, we can open up both the gates and breaches in the wall to get just as many breaches as you would have attacking a wooden palisade. Their walls don't mean anything in that context. Down south, the enemy try once again to break into our territory, but we've got loads of spearmen once again. All the guys who routed last time have come back for another go. And the enemy surely are running low on cav. They don't look as strong as they did previously anyway. Still struggling to beat them because our men are beating around the bush quite a lot, literally in some cases, but we're going to pull ahead in this fight as the grind goes on. The enemy's cav run out of steam and rout or get killed, and the surviving infantry are now outnumbered locally. They're probably tired as well at this point, so we can pick up a win here. and with that our defences in this sector are going to be secure, since, as I said earlier, there are no reinforcements on the way. But for us, we can start spamming units nearby to make sure we have an army at full strength always on the border. That's all looking good then. On to the next turn's fighting. At Row, our men are taking their time breaking in. I guess it's their tiredness, as I've said. We've got a classic noble axeman versus the front of a pike phalanx engagement going on here. That's what we like to see, and the camera is still out of control. Back down south though, they're contesting our border once again with just the dregs of their force. They've got like 20 guys charging into our formation, and it's just not going to work. These guys are clearly too hot-headed. Their surviving cav are easily routed, and we shall be taking that battle and perhaps proving to the Chu that the border is secure. There was also a battle going on just north of Row with our central sector armies. I kind of missed it, but it looks like it was a huge chaotic mess. Everything's on fire, but we had the enemy surrounded with 2 armies against their 1, I believe, so we just destroyed them, plus their forces were mostly peasant spears, I think, as well. Here was a chance encounter between our vassal, the Shang, and a couple of enemy noble cav. So there we go, our vassal did help us out in the war a tiny little bit. They can say that they took part in it. Now we get a message saying settlement has fallen while I was looking at the siege of Jing. It's actually talking about the siege of Row. It'd be nice if it told you which one it was. So this one is going to be still going, but if we zoom over to the south, our men have finally found a way into the city and Row has fallen. We've actually taken some territory from the Chu. At last, the first bit of winning the war is there. We've got some territory. Over at Jing, we've got so many trebuchets that we're opening up the walls. We're just crushing the walls and getting so many breaches that it looks like we are going to be able to take the city soon. We'll be able to outnumber the defenders. Not for this turn though, because the time limit has run out. And then, during the Chu turn, they've come to the negotiating table. They can see that we're starting to break through their front line, and we've probably killed most of their armies as well. They want me to give them some territory. In return, they'll pay me and be my vassal. I thought, okay, so you're willing to be my vassal. Let's refresh the deal a little bit here, because we don't want to be giving away territory, and money doesn't matter to us. In fact, I'll give you money, loads of money, if you just straight up surrender and be our vassal, and we don't have to give you anything else. And even though the deal was really far in my favour there, they're gonna take the deal. So that is that. The war is over and the war is won. All of the remaining Chu territories are now vassalized to us. We even get an achievement for doing that, apparently. You might think it would have been good to carry on and try to take some of their territory now that they're weak, but remember, the amount of territory that you can hold is limited by your authority, and I think we're already over the cap with the capture of Row. So we can't actually occupy more of their territory, meaning having them be our vassal is perfect. It doesn't get any better than that at this stage. At Row, I was even considering just destroying the settlement because we are over the cap and we don't want to increase our unrest, but I'm going to end up keeping it. We'll gradually get a tiny bit more authority through tech, but we're pretty much at the maximum amount you can get in the game. With this new peace secured, I thought we might be getting close to actually getting the conquest victory objective. All of Chu is now considered to be part of our population, but actually not really. We're still pretty far away from having the amount of people you need for either the conquest or the Emperor Son of Heaven victory. We're even closer actually to getting a cultural victory than we are to getting the regular military victories after all that conquest, which was unexpected, and we are still going to win by default if no one else does any better than us, and with only some 80 or something turns remaining, we probably are going to win if we just hit end turn 80 times. I don't think anyone else is going to grow much more in this late stage of the game. That said, we are recording this game, remember, and just waiting for us to win may not be the most interesting end to the campaign, so we'll see about that in a second. For now, we need to attend to our armies. More specifically, we need to get rid of them. It's time for our men to go home in victory, and for us to go from being quite rich to extremely rich once again by getting all of our income back. We're left just doing what we do best, booming up, buying things we don't really need, trying to get some culture points and just generally make people happy, and just trying to get rid of all this money, really. The same thing I've been doing for the last 100 or so turns, but haven't talked all that much about. I did meet the Bar at some point, a faction to the southwest somewhere. I tried to make them my vassal, but they refused, but I was able to make them be my friend, and they even paid me for the privilege, so that was something. I still feel a little bit like the big daddy of that diplomacy. I need to decide my strategy now, and my inspiration to make a decision came from looking at the tech tree. I thought, should we bother getting techs that improve our culture? Are we actually going to go for the cultural victory since we're pretty close to it? The thing about the cultural victory is you have to have more than, or 50% more than the guy in second or something like that to be able to win a cultural victory, and the Zhou are really close to us in terms of culture points. So that means we're very unlikely to win a culture victory. They're going to be booming up and we're going to be booming up at the same time, and we'll probably end up with the same amount of culture. So since we can't do that, we have to look at the ones that are based around population. That means we need more vassals or more people to formally recognize the Wu as the dynasty of the emperor. In order to do that, we need to find these people that we supposedly don't rule, and we can use these stat screens to help us with that. The answer becomes very quickly clear. It's the Dongyi. That tribe to the north apparently have loads of settlements, nearly as many as us, and they have quite a few people. We're the biggest individual power, and our vassals count towards our population count as well, so we can ignore them on this chart. But yes, getting the Dongyi is the next best thing to expand our population. We need to vassalize them somehow. Looking up to the north, the Dongyi are a pretty tempting target. Our vassal the Shang is right in the middle of their territory, so that's a nice strategic advantage, and we can see some of their places are very undeveloped with just wooden walls and no garrison. The other potential target, the Zhou, is further away and they're more developed, so it will be hard to attack them, meaning it's going to have to be the Dongyi. They are in trouble. And we even spot on the very front line, they've got a settlement that doesn't even have any walls and no garrison. They are asking for trouble right here. So apparently these settlements are full of people, and we need them to either recognize us as the emperor or be in our vassalized empire. There is a treaty between us. We've got the fraternal harmony thing, so we have to wait 20-something turns before we're allowed to go to war with them. I'm sure you can just break the treaty, but I'm going to be nice. I'm going to use that time to build up our military to its maximum possible strength, upgrade everything that we can, and then send the full force of our army for the last 50 or so turns of the game, and see if we can vassalize those people and what effect that has on our score, if we even can do it. Join me for that next time.